Have you ever woken up in the quiet glow of dawn, staring at the empty side of the bed, wondering if the loneliness you're feeling is just a fleeting shadow, or the start of something truly liberating? If you're over 70 and caught in the tangled web of a partnership that's more chain than comfort, or if you're proudly single but haunted by whispers from friends and family urging you to settle down in your golden years, then buckle up, because this video is about to shatter every myth you've been fed about love after 70. We're diving headfirst into the raw, unfiltered truth. Having a partner can be downright harmful if you're over 70, from the emotional drain that steals your spark to the hidden health risks that no one talks about. But here's the game changer. Staying single over 70 isn't a curse. It's your secret superpower, and I'll reveal the 7 game-changing reasons why, like reclaiming your wallet from endless compromises, dodging the heartbreak that hits harder in later life, and unlocking a freedom so profound it feels like breathing for the first time in decades. Stick with me until the very end, because that final reason, it's the one that could rewrite your entire legacy, turning solitude into a triumphant roar that echoes through your sunset years. Trust me, you won't see it coming, but you'll thank me for it. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you like this video, you can help me continue to spread the old age lesson. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like this video, please comment number 1. If you don't like it, comment number 0 to let me know, so I can make a better video for you. Now let's get started. Reason 1. Emotional stress from conflict. No one prepares you for how profoundly emotional stress reshapes your inner world after 70. In our youth, arguments are like summer storms, fierce but fleeting. We shrug them off with a deep breath, a walk around the block, or a heartfelt apology over coffee. Our bodies are resilient engines, quick to reset, our minds elastic enough to pivot without a trace of residue. Sleep comes easily, laughter returns swiftly, and by dawn, the rift feels like a distant memory we can even chuckle about later. But time etches changes we can't outrun. As we age, that innate bounce-back erodes, not from frailty, but from the subtle shifts in our biology and spirit. Hormonal balances tilt, cortisol, the stress hormone, lingers longer in our systems, and our nervous systems, once wired for rapid recovery, now operate at a gentler, more deliberate pace. What was once a minor disagreement becomes a persistent echo, reverberating through sleepless nights, tightened muscles, and a vague, unrelenting fog that colors every hour. Consider Edith, who was 73 when she tentatively reopened the door to her heart. Widowed for over 12 years, she'd built a life of quiet independence. Tending her small garden, volunteering at the local library, savoring solo evenings with a good book and a glass of herbal tea. Loneliness had been her companion, but so had peace, a steady, unshakable calm she'd come to cherish. Then came Harold, a widower from her bridge club, with his easy smile and stories of travels they'd both dreamed of but never taken. Their early months were a gentle bloom, shared suppers where laughter bridged the silences, twilight strolls through the neighborhood park where hands brushed accidentally on purpose, and those rare, wordless moments of simply being together on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the dusk. For the first time in years, Edith felt seen, her world expanding just enough to remind her she was still alive in ways beyond survival. But affection, unchecked, can curdle. Harold's warmth soured into something sharper. He nitpicked her inefficient meal planning, insisting on rigid schedules that clashed with her intuitive rhythm. His calls multiplied, from one a day to a barrage of check-ins that felt less like care and more like surveillance. When she politely requested an evening alone to call her daughter or simply unwind with her knitting, his frustration erupted. "After all I've given, you can't spare a moment?" The criticisms piled up like autumn leaves. Too much time with friends, not enough deference to his opinions, a subtle erosion of her boundaries disguised as concern. Edith's body betrayed the toll first. Nights that once ended in grateful slumber now twisted into marathons of rumination. She'd lie awake, heart pounding like a trapped bird, replaying every barbed word, every sigh of exasperation. Her chest would constrict, a vice of anxiety squeezing the air from her lungs, while her mind spun endless what-ifs. Was I too sensitive? Did I misread his intentions? Mornings dawned heavy, her limbs leaden with fatigue that no amount of chamomile or deep breathing could lift. Even simple joys, her garden, her books, dulled under the shadow of anticipation, each day laced with the dread of the next inevitable clash. When she summoned the courage to end it, 6 months in, the relief was visceral. Over tea with her closest friend, tears streaming, she confessed, It's like I've just surfaced from underwater, gasping for the first real breath in ages. I slept through the night last night. Deep, dreamless, like my body finally remembered how. That confession unlocked a flood of shared stories from others in her circle. The widow whose devoted partner turned possessive, the divorcee whose remarriage amplified old insecurities into chronic worry. These weren't dramatic betrayals, but the slow drip of everyday friction, amplified by age into something corrosive. Science echoes what Edith lived. Research from the American Psychological Association highlights how chronic stress in older adults disrupts the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the body's stress response system, leading to prolonged inflammation, weakened immunity, and heightened risks for conditions like hypertension or insomnia. Emotional wounds, once superficial scratches, now scar deeper because our emotional reserves are finite. We've spent decades building them, and they're not infinitely renewable. A 2022 study in the Journal of Gerontology found that seniors in conflicted relationships reported 40% higher rates of depressive symptoms than their single or harmoniously partnered peers. Not from isolation, but from the unrelenting drip of discord. This isn't about weakness. It's the honest architecture of aging. Our hearts, wiser but wearier, guard themselves more fiercely. Shadows of conflict stretch longer across the landscape of our days, stirring not just mental unrest but physical echoes. Elevated blood pressure that lingers, appetites that wane, a spirit that dims under the weight. What was once a simple disagreement now cascades into a health crisis. Fatigue that saps your energy for cherished hobbies, anxiety that isolates you further from friends, even the creeping edge of depression that steals the color from sunsets. And so, for many over 70, the sanctuary of solitude emerges not as a concession, but a profound reclamation. Without the constant negotiation of egos, without the invasion of another's unmet expectations, you reclaim the sovereignty of your mornings. You wake to birdsong, not brewing tempests. You breathe without the subtle brace against criticism. It's a peace that allows your nervous system to unfurl, your sleep to deepen, your joy to root unthreatened. The lesson, etched in Edith's quiet exhale, is unflinching. Never trade your inner equilibrium for the illusion of companionship. Relationships can illuminate lives with warmth and wonder, but if they exact a toll on your calm, eroding your rest, fraying your nerves, dimming your light, they are a luxury you can no longer afford. At this stage, your well-being is your wealth, a currency more precious than gold. Peace isn't just preferable, it's essential. Guard it like the rare bloom it is. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Reason 2. Financial complications. Love, they say, is blind, but money has eyes like a hawk, sharp and unforgiving. In our 20s or 30s, romance might sweep us into impulsive gestures, lavish dates, shared leases, merged bank accounts born of passion's fever. Financial missteps then are speed bumps, annoying, but navigable with time, grit, and a fresh paycheck. But after 70, money transcends mere transactions. It's the bedrock of security, funding the medications that keep arthritis at bay, the home health aid for those off days, the modest travels that stitch joy into routine. It's the buffer against inflation's creep, the legacy you parcel out to grandchildren with handwritten notes tucked in envelopes. A new relationship, intoxicating in its novelty, can blindside you to these stakes, turning shared dreams into shared debts. Roger's story illustrates this peril with heartbreaking clarity. At 68, freshly bereaved after 42 years of marriage, he navigated grief like a man adrift in familiar waters, clinging to the routines his late wife had woven into their life. Brewing her favorite chamomile at dawn, tending the rosebushes she'd planted, attending church solos where her voice still echoed in his memory. The ache was constant but contained, a private tide that ebbed with time. Then, at a high school reunion's serendipitous corner, he rekindled a spark with Marlene, a classmate whose laughter hadn't dimmed with the decades. Their reconnection was a balm. Late-night phone calls reminiscing about sock hops and stolen kisses, coffee dates that stretched into afternoons, a tentative invitation for her to visit his cozy bungalow on the outskirts of town. Before long, Marlene's belongings dotted his shelves, silk scarves in the hall closet, her favorite teacups clinking alongside his. Roger, ever the provider, reveled in the revival, treating her to dinners at the Italian place downtown, where candlelight softened the lines on their faces, surprising her with a weekend in the nearby mountains, breathing in pine-scented air as if reclaiming lost youth, even splurging on a new living room set, plush and inviting, because it feels like home again. His pension and savings, meticulously husbanded over a career in engineering, seemed ample, a nest egg for two, he thought, generous and unburdened. But abundance has a way of evaporating under assumption. Marlene's tastes leaned lavish. Designer blouses from catalogs that arrived like clockwork, spa days she'd deserved after years of scrimping, impromptu lunches with girlfriends that left tabs unpaid. She spoke breezily of splitting everything down the middle, yet her contributions trickled in sporadically, a check here for groceries, a vague promise there for the electric bill. Roger, loath to dim the glow with practicality, let it slide at first. She's adjusting, he reasoned. This is what couples do. The fracture came subtly, then sharply. A quiet evening devolved into accusation when he mentioned the dwindling balance. I thought we were partners in this. Marlene's offense was volcanic. Tears, slammed doors, a litany of his stinginess that twisted his generosity into greed. The warmth curdled into cold silences, punctuated by passive digs. If you'd planned better, we wouldn't be scraping by. What had been a haven of rediscovered laughter became a ledger of grievances. Roger's hard-won security siphoned away not by malice, but by mismatched expectations and unspoken entitlements. By the time he gently suggested separate finances, the damage was etched. Thousands vanished into a void of unchecked spending, trust fractured beyond repair. Marlene moved out amid mutual exhaustion, leaving Roger not just poorer in pocket, but poorer in spirit, questioning his judgment, mourning the betrayal of his own open heart. He confided to his son over a fishing trip, I thought I was buying joy, son. Turns out, I was auctioning off my peace. Roger's regret underscores a peril unique to later life, time's asymmetry. At 40, a financial fumble might mean ramen noodles and overtime shifts, a detour, not a dead end. But at 70, the runway shortens. Fixed incomes from Social Security or pensions are lifelines, not luxuries, calibrated to cover rising healthcare premiums, which, per AARP data, surged 12% annually for seniors, and the quiet dignities of aging, adaptive home modifications, reliable transportation to doctor's appointments. Entangling finances invites chaos. Remarriage can slash survivor benefits by up to 50%, per IRS rules, or trigger Medicaid clawbacks if assets exceed thresholds. Shared accounts blur lines, inviting disputes over inheritances that pit partners against adult children, sowing family rifts that outlast any romance. A 2023 Fidelity study revealed that 62% of seniors in blended late-life relationships faced financial strain, often from overlooked details like joint tax filings or co-signed loans. It's not cynicism to flag these, it's stewardship. Protecting your resources isn't selfishness, it's the ethical imperative to honor the decades of sacrifice that built them. The overtime shifts, the frugal holidays, the dreams deferred for family. Wisdom lies in vigilance. If love beckons, approach with eyes wide open. Maintain separate accounts, draft prenups or cohabitation agreements with a neutral attorney, consult a financial planner versed in elder law before merging anything. And release the guilt. Your nest egg isn't just yours. It's the vessel carrying your independence forward, ensuring you age on your terms, not compromised by compromise. For Roger, solitude restored clarity. He rebalanced his books, reinstated his rose-tending rituals, and found that true abundance blooms in autonomy. Choices unclouded by another's whims, nights free from the whisper of unpaid bills, a legacy intact for the grandkids' college funds. Staying single sidesteps these snares entirely, granting the freedom to tithe to charities that stir your soul, splurge on that solo cruise to Alaska, or simply let compound interest work its quiet magic. Your money, steward solo, becomes more than security, it's sovereignty. Reason 3. The quiet erosion of personal space and routine. Now, let's turn to the third reason. One that sneaks in like morning mist, subtle and pervasive, reshaping the cadence of your days without a single raised voice. It's the loss of personal space and routine, those invisible threads that weave the fabric of a life well lived after 70. In youth, we crave novelty, bending schedules to fit lovers' whims, surrendering solitude for the thrill of shared chaos. But as years accumulate, routine becomes refuge. The sacred rhythm of your mornings, the unhurried stretch of afternoons, the private rituals that affirm, this is mine, this is me. A new partner, however loving, disrupts this harmony, turning your haven into a shared stage where compromises chip away at your core. Picture Eleanor, 71, a retired schoolteacher whose days unfolded like a well-loved novel. Widowed young, she crafted a tapestry of solitude that suited her soul. Dawn yoga on the sun-dappled deck, overlooking her wildflower meadow. Mid-morning pottering in her herb garden, clipping rosemary for the evening soup. Lazy afternoons lost in biographies of unsung heroines, feet tucked under a quilt her mother stitched. Evenings were hers alone. Perhaps a jazz record spinning softly, a journal entry capturing the day's small graces, or a bubble bath drawn just hot enough to melt the world's edges. This wasn't isolation. It was intention, a deliberate curation of peace that had healed old heartaches and fueled her volunteer work at the community center. Enter Victor, a charming neighbor whose widowed status mirrored her own. Their bond sparked over fence-line chats about heirloom tomatoes and faded Polaroids from the 60s. Soon, he was a fixture. Breakfasts together, his idea of simple meant bacon grease splattering her pristine kitchen, joint errands that stretched her solo grocery runs into opinionated debates over cereal brands, evenings commandeered by his TV marathons of war documentaries. Fascinating to him, but a jarring intrusion on her quiet reveries. Victor wasn't unkind. He simply existed on a louder frequency, his energy expansive where hers was contained. "We're building a life together," he'd say, oblivious to how his unpacked suitcase lingered in her hallway. His unsolicited advice on her inefficient gardening appended her flow. At first, Eleanor accommodated. These were the sacrifices of love, she told herself. But the toll mounted invisibly. Her yoga mat gathered dust in the corner, replaced by hurried coffees gulped between his stories. The garden, once a meditative sanctuary, became a negotiation. Why not plant those hybrid roses I like? Journaling sessions dissolved into distracted nods as he recounted his day. Even sleep, her deepest anchor, fragmented. His snoring symphony turned her bedroom into a relay race of restlessness, her cherished 8 hours shaved to fitful fragments. The erosion extended beyond logistics to essence. Eleanor's spirit, once buoyant in its independence, began to wilt under the weight of perpetual adjustment. Irritation flickered at the edges. Why did his preferences always eclipse hers? Resentment simmered, not from malice, but from the slow suffocation of self. A study from the National Institute on Aging notes that disrupted routines in older adults correlate with heightened cortisol levels and diminished life satisfaction, as our brains crave the predictability that fosters emotional stability. For seniors, whose cognitive flexibility naturally wanes, these shifts aren't mere inconveniences. They're disorienting, amplifying feelings of loss and eroding the autonomy that buffers against age's vulnerabilities. Eleanor's breaking point came on a crisp autumn afternoon. Victor had rearranged her kitchen cabinets, for efficiency, burying her favorite mug behind a fortress of his protein shakes. Staring at the chaos, she felt a wave of grief not for him, but for the woman she'd been, unapologetically, gloriously herself. Their parting was amicable, laced with gratitude for the chapter shared, but in the quiet aftermath, she reclaimed her world with fervor. The yoga resumed at dawn, the garden burst anew under her hands, and her journal filled with entries of rediscovery. I forgot how sweet it is to answer only to my own rhythm. This is the understated power of personal space after 70. It's not empty, it's fertile ground for growth. Routines aren't rigid, they're lifelines, anchoring us amid the uncertainties of health flares or memory lapses. A partner, well-meaning as they may be, introduces variables. Clashing circadian clocks that steal your golden hours, spatial encroachments that crowd your physical and psychic air, the subtle dilution of me time into us time until your edges blur. Staying single preserves this sanctity. You dictate the thermostat's whisper, the playlist's mood, the pantry's poetry. No apologies for lingering in bed till 10. No debates over dinner's simplicity. It's freedom to evolve on your timeline, perhaps experimenting with watercolor painting one week, silent retreats the next, without the gravitational pull of another's orbit. As Eleanor now says, I didn't lose love, I found myself again. And that's a routine worth every solitary sunrise. In the end, these reasons, emotional tempests, financial fogs, routines unraveling, converge on a singular truth. After 70, love must earn its place, not claim it by default. Companionship can be a gift, but only if it amplifies your light, not dims it. For many, the richest chapter unfolds solo, a life of uncompromised peace, untangled security, and rhythms that hum in perfect, personal pitch. What story does your heart whisper? Share in the comments. Let's keep this conversation alive. Reason 3. Loss of routine and personal space. In the golden years after 70, life often settles into a delicate tapestry of small, cherished rituals, those unassuming threads that weave stability into the fabric of our days. Picture this: the soft clink of a porcelain cup as you pour your morning tea, steam rising like a gentle whisper in the quiet dawn. Or sinking into that worn armchair by the window, its cushions molded perfectly to your form after decades of faithful companionship, where you unfold the newspaper with deliberate care, savoring each headline without the intrusion of voices or haste. These moments aren't mere habits. They're the quiet architects of our inner world. They impose a soothing rhythm on the passage of time, tether us to the essence of who we've become through a lifetime of joys and trials, and offer a profound, unspoken peace that soothes the soul's subtle aches. For many in their 70s, these routines aren't luxuries, they're lifelines. In a phase of life where the body may creak a little more with each dawn and the mind occasionally wanders through memories like an old friend revisiting familiar paths, these personal anchors provide a sense of control in an increasingly unpredictable world. They affirm our autonomy, reminding us that even as the years accumulate, we remain the authors of our own narratives. Lose them, and the days can blur into a disorienting haze, where purpose feels elusive and rest becomes a fleeting visitor. Consider Louise, a vibrant 70-year-old widow whose life had blossomed into a serene garden of self-nurtured routines. Each morning, she rose with the birds, slipping into a pair of well-loved slippers to tend her backyard sanctuary. There, amid the dew-kissed roses and lavender beds she'd planted over the years, she would journal under the tentative caress of first light, capturing not grand epics, but the simple poetry of her thoughts, a dream from the night before, a gratitude for the sun's return, or a reflection on a book half-read the evening prior. Her afternoons unfolded like a leisurely sonata, spent curled up with a novel from her overflowing shelves or her needles clicking rhythmically over a half-finished scarf, the yarn's soft colors mirroring the changing seasons outside. Evenings brought a hush of contentment, a solo supper by candlelight, perhaps a classical record spinning tales of bygone eras, followed by an early retreat to bed, where sleep came as a trusted ally. This wasn't isolation, it was equilibrium, a life sculpted with intention, where every element served her well-being. Loneliness had no foothold here. Instead, there was a profound companionship with oneself, honed through years of introspection and quiet triumphs. Then came Harold, a kind-hearted widower from her local book club, whose easy smile and shared love of literature sparked a tentative hope for companionship. At first, their budding romance felt like a gentle breeze invigorating her world. Weekends together were a delightful interlude, lazy brunches at cozy cafes, strolls through autumn leaves hand in hand, evenings debating plot twists over herbal infusions. Louise imagined weaving him into her life without unraveling its core, a shared peace, perhaps, where their worlds complemented rather than collided. But when they decided to merge households, blending two lives under one roof, the subtle fractures began to appear almost imperceptibly. Harold, a night owl by nature, slept until the sun climbed high, his alarm blaring like a siren's call through the walls she'd once known as her private haven. Mornings that had been hers alone, sacred hours for tea and journaling, now echoed with the blare of the television, tuned to boisterous news programs that drowned out the birdsong. Her kitchen, a domain of precise order where utensils had their designated homes and spices aligned like soldiers in a row, became a canvas for his impromptu rearrangements. Pots stacked haphazardly, her favorite mug relegated to a high shelf she could no longer reach without a stool. One by one, the pillars of her routine crumbled. The garden, once her dawn ritual, went untended as mornings slipped into hurried negotiations over breakfast preferences. Afternoons of knitting dissolved into joint errands or his preferred card games with neighbors, leaving her needles idle and her stories unfinished. Evenings, that former sanctuary of solitude, now hummed with the low murmur of his phone calls to family, pulling her into conversations she hadn't sought. "I didn't realize how much my little habits mattered," Louise confided one afternoon to a close friend over a hurried coffee, her voice laced with a quiet bewilderment. "They weren't just things I did, they were who I was. Until they were no longer mine, I never knew the ache of their absence." This, dear reader, unveils one of the most insidious costs of late-life partnership, the quiet theft of personal space. It's not merely about physical square footage, the square meters of a home or the elbow room at a shared table. No, it's far more intimate, a matter of the soul's sovereignty. Personal space at 70 is the unyielding right to orchestrate your hours, to rise when your body whispers now, to savor a meal seasoned to your exact taste without explanation, to surrender to an afternoon nap or a sudden urge to rearrange your bookshelf without consultation or compromise. It's the freedom to exist without apology, to let your spirit breathe in the contours of your own making. For those who've navigated the tempests of earlier decades, raising families, climbing careers, weathering losses, these routines evolve from optional comforts into essential bulwarks. They shield against the entropy of aging, where minor ailments or foggy recollections can erode confidence. Compromise, once a badge of maturity in youth, can morph in later years into a series of erosions. A yes here that costs an hour of peace, a concession there that dims your inner light. What begins as an act of generosity too often tallies up as diminishment, leaving you adrift in a home that no longer feels like yours. The wisdom in this: vigilance over your sacred ground. Acknowledge the profound worth of your time, that favored chair with its view of the world beyond, the hush of your morning silence unbroken, the rituals that murmur, "This is mine." If sharing them risks their dissolution, pause and weigh the exchange. Is the warmth of another's presence worth the chill of lost autonomy? For many, the answer crystallizes in solitude's embrace. Remaining single isn't a retreat, but a reclamation. It honors the rhythms you've composed over a lifetime, fortifies your independence like an unbreached fortress, and cradles the peace you've so artfully constructed, one quiet cup of tea at a time. Yet, routines and space are but one layer of the tapestry. Venture deeper, and you'll find that late-life love can ensnare you in threads far more binding, drawing you into roles that demand not just your time, but your very vitality. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Reason 4. Increased caregiving burden. The allure of companionship in our later chapters. It's a siren song, isn't it? We envision it as a sun-dappled path of mutual delight. Candlelit dinners where stories flow like fine wine, laughter echoing through sunlit rooms, hands intertwined on unhurried walks that celebrate the simple miracle of still being here, together. At 70 and beyond, this promise feels especially poignant, a second bloom after the frosts of loss. But love, in its tender evolution, has a shadowed twin, the potential to morph, almost stealthily, into an all-consuming mantle of caregiving. What begins as shared joy can, with the inexorable march of time and health's frailties, pivot into a solitary burden, one that tests the limits of endurance you may not have known you possessed. This shift isn't born of malice or neglect. It's the stark arithmetic of aging. Bodies, once resilient vessels, begin to tally the toll of years. Joints that protest with every step, memories that flicker like old film reels, energies that ebb like a receding tide. When these changes visit a partner, the romance you cherished can quietly contract into a contract of care, one you signed in the flush of infatuation, but without the fine print of fatigue. Let me introduce you to George, a spry 76-year-old retiree whose days, before love's detour, brimmed with the freedoms he'd earned. A former schoolteacher with a penchant for bird-watching and volunteering at the local history museum, George had envisioned his post-retirement life as a canvas of exploration. Dawn hikes through misty trails, afternoons lost in dusty archives, evenings hosting lively debates with old friends over homemade chili. Solitude suited him, not as a void, but as a spacious hall where his curiosities could roam unchecked. Enter Ruth, encountered at a sun-warmed church picnic amid the scent of blooming lilacs and the hum of communal chatter. At 74, she was a whirlwind of vitality, her laughter infectious, her tales of travels through Europe vivid and unspooled with theatrical flair. They bonded over shared hymns and a mutual disdain for bland potluck casseroles, igniting a spark that felt like fate's gentle nudge towards second chances. Finally, George thought, someone to share the sunsets with. Within a whirlwind of months, Ruth had traded her apartment for a room in his modest bungalow. The early days were a honeymoon of rediscovery, collaborative feasts in the kitchen, where her flair for spicy curries met his steady hand at chopping. Sunday services hand in hand, their voices blending in harmonious praise. Twilight ambles around the neighborhood, pausing to name the warblers flitting overhead or debate the merits of the latest bestseller. Life, it seemed, had gifted them a late-season idyll, rich with the sweetness of rediscovered tenderness. But time, that impartial sculptor, soon etched new contours. Not quite a year in, Ruth's steps began to falter, a subtle hesitation on stairs, a wince after longer walks. What commenced as a stylish cane, wielded with wry humor, my new fashion accessory, escalated to a walker's metallic clatter echoing through their halls. Mornings that once started with shared coffee now required George to steady her through the shower's slick tiles, his hands gentle but his heart heavy with unspoken worry. Afternoons blurred into pharmaceutical symphonies, sorting pill organizers into color-coded compartments, tracking dosages with the precision of a watchmaker, deciphering cryptic doctor notes over the phone. Evenings, once for storytelling, devolved into the meticulous choreography of meals, chopping softer foods, portioning for her reduced appetite, coaxing bites with encouragement masked as casual chat. The man who had dreamed of boundless retirement found his horizons contracting. Bird-watching outings dwindled to glimpses from the window, the museum's archives gathering dust as his volunteer shifts evaporated. Sleep, that former refuge, fractured under the weight of midnight checks, listening for her breathing, rising to adjust pillows or fetch water. His own blood pressure, once a steady ally, climbed like a vine overtaking a trellis. Restless nights carved shadows under his eyes. The vitality that had fueled his hikes now leaked away in drips of exhaustion. "I love her more than words can hold," he confided to his journal one fog-shrouded evening, the pages blurred by a rare tear. "But this is a different kind of devotion, one that leaves me hollowed out." George's story isn't an outlier. It's an echo chamber for countless others. Caregiving at any age is a Herculean endeavor, but after 70, it becomes a high-wire act over a chasm of vulnerability. Research illuminates the toll with unflinching clarity. Caregivers report stress levels that rival those of frontline workers, with elevated risks of clinical depression, weakened immune responses, and accelerated physical decline, heart strains, sleep disorders, even premature aging etched into the caregiver's own frame. When your own body craves the grace of gentler paces, more rest, fewer burdens, a buffer against the world's edges, absorbing a partner's needs can catapult you toward burnout's brink. It's not a failure of affection. It's the raw math of finite reserves. This isn't to condemn caregiving as villainy. For some souls, it's a sacred forge, tempering love through service, yielding depths of connection unimaginable in easier times. Yet, it demands entry with eyes wide open, candid conversations about boundaries before frailty knocks, contingency plans etched like maps for uncharted terrains, and an unflinching audit of your capacity. Can you lift not just their frame, but the emotional load? Will your dreams defer indefinitely to theirs? Opting for singlehood sidesteps this precipice, a deliberate shield for the vitality you've stewarded through 7 decades. It liberates those precious, irreplaceable years for self-tendering, for hikes unchained by another's pace, for archives explored at leisure, for sunsets savored in solitary awe. Independence here isn't an act of selfishness. It's stewardship, a fierce guardianship of your health's flickering flame. If you've ever shouldered a load that bent you double, you know this truth viscerally. At this stage, prioritizing yourself isn't indulgence. It's the ultimate act of wisdom, ensuring your story endures with grace. Reason 5. Family tensions and inheritance issues. A new love in your later years isn't just a personal chapter. It's a seismic shift that echoes through the entire family tree. When you're over 70, every decision you make carries the weight of decades. The sacrifices you've made, the bonds you've built, and the legacy you've carefully tended. What might feel like a blooming flower of joy to you, a chance to rediscover laughter, intimacy, or simply the warmth of another's hand, can appear to your loved ones as an unwelcome storm cloud, threatening the familiar rhythms of family life. This ripple effect is profound and often unforeseen. Your children, now adults with their own intricate lives, may suddenly view your budding romance through a lens of protectiveness laced with anxiety. They worry not just about your emotional well-being, but about the practicalities. Will this stranger disrupt holiday traditions? Will shared stories around the dinner table now include someone new, diluting the intimacy they've known? And lurking beneath it all are the unspoken fears about finances, health, and the inevitable passage of time. Consider Martha's story, a poignant reminder of how these tensions can unfold. At 66, widowed for 5 years and feeling the quiet ache of an empty nest, she joined a local book club on a whim. There, amid discussions of Victorian novels and forgotten poets, she met Elias, a retired history professor with wire-rimmed glasses, a gentle laugh, and an encyclopedic knowledge of ancient civilizations. Their connection was effortless, like slipping into a well-worn favorite sweater. Afternoons blurred into animated debates over tea, Evenings stretched into leisurely walks through the autumn-kissed parks, hands brushing tentatively at first, then intertwining with a confidence that surprised them both. For the first time since her husband's passing, Martha felt truly seen, not as a mother or grandmother, but as a woman with dreams deferred and stories untold. She envisioned simple futures, weekend getaways to coastal towns, shared gardens blooming with heirloom roses, perhaps even co-authoring a light-hearted memoir of their eclectic tastes. Emboldened by this spark, she shared the news with her two sons, David and Michael, during a family brunch. The air, once filled with easy banter about grandchildren's soccer games and work triumphs, grew thick with an unnatural hush. David's fork paused mid-air. Michael's smile faltered into a polite nod. "That's great, Mom," David managed, but his eyes darted to his brother, a silent exchange passing between them. What followed was a slow unraveling. The son's initial silence morphed into probing questions that felt more like interrogations. "How well do you really know him, Mom? Has he asked about your savings?" Michael ventured one evening over the phone, his voice tight with concern. David, ever the pragmatist, delved deeper. "What about your health directives? And the house? Do you plan to update the will?" These weren't idle curiosities. They stemmed from a deep-seated fear that this book club beau might erode the stability Martha had always provided. They imagined worst-case scenarios: financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, or a hasty remarriage that could append the inheritance they'd quietly anticipated as a symbol of her enduring love. The warmth in their conversations chilled. Family dinners, once a refuge of shared recipes and inside jokes, turned into minefields of subtext. Martha found herself defending her choices. "He's not after anything, David. He loves talking about Dad's old war stories with me." But the damage accumulated like frost on a windowpane. Elias, sensing the strain, suggested they slow down, but Martha's heart tugged in two directions. Within a year, the relationship quietly dissolved, not from faded affection, but from the exhaustion of bridging the growing chasm with her sons. The final straw was a heated call where David accused her of rushing into something foolish, his words landing like a slap despite his later apology. "I never imagined," Martha confided to a close friend one rainy afternoon, her voice barely above a whisper as she stirred her untouched tea, "that finding joy again would cost me the closeness I've cherished with my boys. It's like I've traded one kind of loneliness for another, this one sharper because it's laced with guilt." Martha's experience is heartbreakingly common, echoed in countless support groups, therapists' offices, and quiet kitchen tables across the globe. Adult children, even those in their 40s and 50s, often grapple with a cocktail of emotions. Protectiveness born from years of role reversal: you once bandaged their knees. Now they fret over your pill bottles, resentment at the thought of divided attention, and a primal fear of losing their anchor. They envision a new partner as an interloper who might monopolize your time during precious visits or, more insidiously, sway decisions about end-of-life care. Yet the financial undercurrents add a layer of complexity that's both practical and profoundly emotional. In many jurisdictions, cohabiting later in life can inadvertently grant a partner rights to assets, pensions, homes, or savings, through common law entitlements or joint accounts. Remarriage. It can reset estate plans entirely, potentially entitling a spouse to a significant portion under intestacy laws if wills aren't meticulously updated. Children, already navigating their own midlife pressures, may feel blindsided. "Mom always promised the family cabin would stay with us," one daughter shared in an online forum, her post garnering hundreds of sympathetic replies. These shocks don't heal overnight. They fester, breeding resentment that spills into sibling rivalries and holiday standoffs, fracturing bonds for generations. The emotional toll is equally devastating. What begins as concern can escalate into control, with children second-guessing every dinner invitation or doctor's visit. Studies from geriatric psychologists highlight how these conflicts exacerbate stress, leading to higher rates of anxiety and even physical health declines in seniors. High blood pressure from unspoken arguments, insomnia from replayed conversations. But here's the empowering truth: foresight can be your shield. Start with radical transparency. Sit your children down early, not in defensiveness, but in vulnerability. Share your joys without apology. "This relationship brings me light after so many shadowed days." Address finances head-on. Consult an estate attorney to draft ironclad documents like revocable trusts or prenuptial agreements that safeguard inheritances while honoring your choices. Use tools like family meetings or neutral mediators to air fears before they calcify. And remember, the choice to remain single isn't a retreat from love. It's a deliberate act of stewardship for the family you've poured your life into. It preserves the unfiltered closeness, the unhurried calls, the legacy stories passed down without distraction. Solitude, in this light, becomes a quiet act of generosity, allowing your children to focus on their own paths while you model a life of uncompromised authenticity. Even when family harmony holds, another treasure hangs in the balance: the unyielding sovereignty of your daily existence. Reason 6. Reduced independence and freedom. At 70, independence isn't merely a perk, it's the hard-won cornerstone of your dignity, forged through a lifetime of pivots, provisions, and quiet endurance. These years, often romanticized as golden, are your unscripted canvas. The era to reclaim the self that got sidelined by mortgages, carpools, and crises. Freedom here means dictating the tempo of your days, lingering over a second cup of coffee as the sun crests, or vanishing into a library nook for an afternoon lost in poetry. It's the right to say, today, I choose solitude, or tomorrow, I'll chase a whim across state lines, without negotiation or nod of approval. This liberty feels sacred because it's finite. Time, that relentless editor, trims our horizons. Each unchecked box on your bucket list gleams brighter against the backdrop of what remains. A new relationship, while potentially enriching, carries the subtle risk of erosion, not through malice, but through the inexorable pull of partnership's practicalities. Schedules entwine, preferences blend, and suddenly, the solo traveler in you yields to the couple's consensus. Walter's tale illustrates this erosion with heartbreaking subtlety. At 74, freshly retired from a career in engineering that had tethered him to blueprints and deadlines, he exhaled into a world of possibility. For decades, he'd sketched mental maps of adventures, meandering Amtrak routes through the amber waves of Midwest farmlands, reunions with college buddies in dusty New England hamlets, immersive weeks in forgotten southern towns where jazz spilled from corner bars. These weren't extravagances. They were reparations for the youth spent in fluorescent-lit offices, a vow to himself. Finally, my compass points to wonder. Dating re-entered his orbit gently, via a community center's travel lecture series. There he met Clara, a widowed librarian with a penchant for cozy mysteries and home-cooked stews. She was kind, her eyes crinkling with genuine curiosity about his tales of bridge-building exploits. Their early dates hummed with promise. Picnics in blooming arboretums, evenings decoding cryptic crosswords by firelight. Walter dreamed aloud of tandem explorations, her steady presence amplifying his wanderlust. But visions clashed quietly at first. Clara, scarred by a youth of relocations and a marriage that demanded conformity, craved the anchor of routine. Mornings with the newspaper and neighborhood bridge club, afternoons tending her herb garden, evenings with Netflix marathons under a shared Afghan. Travel sounds lovely, dear, she'd say with a soft smile, but the roads are so unpredictable now, and I'd miss my routines. Out of affection, and the heady novelty of mutual care, Walter bent. He swapped a cross-country rail odyssey for a local day trip, citing better weather next year. Then, a planned reunion with his old fraternity brother in Vermont dissolved into rain-check excuses, as Clara's mild vertigo made long drives unappealing. Compromises snowballed like an unchecked avalanche. The vintage suitcase gathering dust in his attic stayed packed, the dog-eared guidebooks yellowed on the shelf. Walter's calendar, once a wild tapestry of spontaneity, rigidified into a grid of her preferences. Tuesday potlucks, Thursday book discussions, Saturday errands run in tandem. He told himself it was love's give and take, a fair trade for her gentle companionship during his occasional aches or lonely evenings. I wasn't angry at her, Walter reflected years later, his voice steady but laced with regret as he gazed at faded postcards from trips unrealized. She never demanded. I just accommodated until the man who dreamed of horizons became the one who stared at the horizon from his porch swing. I was furious at myself for letting the freedom I'd earned slip away, one maybe next time at a time. Walter's quiet surrender captures the insidious nature of this threat. It's rarely overt drama, no explosive arguments or power plays, but the gradual narrowing of your world through well-intentioned concessions. Decisions that once sparked from your core now loop through a dyad. Shall we dine out or stay in? Morphs into deferred delights. Spontaneity, that elixir of youth recaptured, evaporates under the weight of mutual comfort zones. Your hard-forged autonomy, nights spent stargazing alone on the deck, impulsive gallery visits, or simply the luxury of silence unbroken, begins to feel like a relic. This isn't about decrying partnership. Many thrive in it, co-creating adventures that eclipse solo ones. But for others, the math doesn't add up. Finite years demand ruthless prioritization. Research from aging specialists underscores this. Seniors in mismatched relationships report higher cortisol levels from chronic low-grade stress, eroding vitality faster than solitude ever could. The antidote? A fierce, unapologetic design of your days around your essence. Curate your calendar like a masterpiece. Block sacred slots for solo pursuits, whether it's a solo hike at dawn or a month-long house sit in Tuscany. If romance beckons, seek a co-adventurer whose rhythms harmonize, not homogenize, someone who cheers your whims as fiercely as their own. And above all, guard your independence as holy ground. Because true freedom at 70 isn't the absence of ties. It's the power to tie only those that uplift, leaving space for the unbridled you to breathe. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward. Reason 7. Pressure to settle for the wrong reasons. Yet even this hard-earned freedom can be undermined by a subtler adversary. The insidious societal murmur that equates aloneness with inadequacy. At 70, the world, well-meaning friends, glossy magazine spreads, even casual small talk at the pharmacy, amplifies a narrative that's as outdated as it is oppressive. Find someone dear, life's too short to dine solo. This pressure crests like a tide, pulling many toward the shore of companionship not from genuine longing, but from the undertow of fear. Fear of the pitying glance, the empty chair at gatherings, the ticking clock that seems to echo louder in quiet homes. It's a potent brew, loneliness amplified by cultural scripts that romanticize coupling as the antidote to aging supposed voids. Seniors absorb these messages through every channel. Hallmark cards touting eternal pairs, social media feeds of silver-haired sweethearts, or the well-intentioned nudge from a bridge partner. You need a +1 for the cruise. The result? A quiet desperation that whispers, "Settle now before the options dwindle," turning discernment into defeat. Barbara's journey lays bare this trap's contours. At 69, after a quarter-century marriage that ended in quiet mutual drift rather than drama, she stepped tentatively into the digital dating pool. The senior site promised connection without pressure, profiles of widowers and divorcees seeking genuine companionship in our golden years. Amid the sea of smiling headshots, Robert stood out, polished, punctual, with a LinkedIn-worthy bio touting volunteer stints at the food bank and a love for classical concerts. Their first coffee stretched to 2 hours of amiable chat about grandchildren and garden woes. By date 3, he was floating ideas of making it official. On the surface, he checked every box. Reliable texts at 8 a.m., arm offered at events, a wardrobe of crisp button-downs that screamed stability. Barbara's inner circle cheered. "He's a catch. And look at you too. Picture perfect." Her own doubts flickered like distant lightning. No belly laughs that left her sides aching, no late-night confessions that peeled back souls, no electric hum when their hands brushed. Robert appreciated her needlepoint skills and her brisket recipe, but he skimmed the surface of her passions. Her voracious appetite for sci-fi novels, her solitary dawn yoga rituals, the quirky dream of backpacking Patagonia at 75. He felt like a well-tailored suit, comfortable, but not alive. Still, she assented. Friends' tables brimmed with couples swapping travel yarns. Family reunions buzzed with paired laughter. "I can't be the odd one out forever," she'd rationalize in the mirror, the fear of last one standing gnawing deeper than any spark's absence. 6 months in, the facade cracked. Dinners dragged into rote recitals of weather and woes. Evenings on the couch felt like parallel universes, his remote clicking a metronome to her unspoken yearnings. The isolation deepened, not the crisp solitude of solo evenings with a novel and wine, but a muffled ache of proximity without penetration. "The silence at night was heavier with him beside me," Barbara later journaled, her words raw, "because he couldn't reach the parts of me that still hungered for fire. I was lonelier in company than I'd ever been alone." This snare ensnares so many because it's cloaked in virtue. Companionship is healthiest, proclaim wellness articles, citing studies on social bonds, while glossing over toxic ones. But settling from scarcity, fear of judgment, of withering options, of echoing empty rooms, poisons the well. It trades potential joy for performative normalcy, eroding self-trust and inviting resentment. Psychologists term it relational dissonance. The cognitive grind of the heart saying no, while habit screams stay, spiking anxiety and dimming vitality. The revelation? True fortitude blooms in refusal. Solitude isn't punishment. It's a deliberate haven, a space to cultivate the self without apology. It invites deeper friendships, volunteer passions that ignite purpose, or simply the luxury of mornings unhurried by another's agenda. To navigate this, anchor in abundance. Journal your non-negotiables. What lights your spirit? Seek connections that amplify, not accommodate, through hobby clubs or travel groups where sparks arise organically. Surround yourself with a chosen family that celebrates your wholeness, single or not. And when pressure mounts, counter with compassion for self. I choose from fullness, not fear. At 70, your days are jewels, too luminous for half-hearted haze. You merit guffaws that echo, dialogues that delve, and a companionship, romantic or otherwise, that feels like homecoming. If love arrives as an enhancer, welcome it with open arms. But if it demands dimming your light, stride forth solo, chin lifted, for in self-reverence lies the richest alliance. What fear has whispered loudest to you lately? Share below. We're in this wisdom together. As we wrap up these 7 eye-opening reasons why having a partner can be harmful if you're over 70, and why staying single over 70 might just be your ticket to true bliss, take a deep breath and let it sink in. You've just unlocked the power of choosing yourself in these golden years, free from compromise, heartbreak, and endless obligations. It's not just about surviving. It's about thriving in solitude's sweet embrace. What have you learned so far that hit you right in the heart? Maybe the freedom of uninterrupted joy, or the quiet strength of financial peace. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with one thing you've learned today that you'll bring into practice in your life. Will it be reclaiming your independence, or finally saying no to draining dynamics? Your story could inspire someone else staying single over 70 to embrace their own path. If you like this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more empowering truths on senior life. See you in the next one. Stay fierce, stay single, stay you.